Welcome to Tech Smarter. My name is Abby Ritchie. I'm the host here where we talk with innovators, operators, and investors who are changing the face of aging services. I'd like to, before I invite my guest on, thank Leading Age Arizona for sponsoring this episode and to the Smarter Service for producing it. Now, if you are a senior living operator and you're struggling to provide consistent tech support for your residents, please reach out to me on LinkedIn and let us help you professionalize this valuable service. Now, without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and bring my guest on. Today, we have Lindsay Evans of KARE. Welcome to Tech Smarter, Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Abby. I'm so excited to be here talking all of the things crazy technology and supporting our customers, operators, and subsequently always we're all here to serve the residents. So glad to be part of this conversation.
Yes, we are. We're all here to serve the residents, to serve the older adults in our lives. And could you please introduce yourself? Tell our viewers how you came to be in senior living and how long you've been with KARE and what you do with KARE, please.
Absolutely. Long story. Really, it starts with, as we all do, with personal experience. I grew up with 3 sets of grandparents. I have memories and know even into adulthood, 4 great grandparents in my life. So just, that experience growing up with this reverence and support of these older adults who had amazing stories and amazing experiences that I got to learn from was incredibly impactful. Other people have maybe stories of their family being part of senior living. Mine is just the best conversations with the older adults in my life. Just fantastic. And, driving lessons, whatever it was just the best experience. So 2 great grandmothers at my wedding, 3 sets of grandparents at my wedding, just fantastic. So always had and always continue to have an immense amount of respect for what it takes and what goes into respecting that, and then having older adults age with dignity, and also having choices and availability of the care that they need as they're going through all of the different stages of life. I started in the industry and more in like a nurse call system process, and then resident engagement process. And then for the past 4.5 years working with KARE, more on the major issue that we have, obviously, with staffing. So in the industry. So I've been very, very excited to be participating in new technologies, innovations, and solutions to help solve real problems in the senior living industry.
I absolutely love your origin story. One of my greatest joys is connecting with people who have been impacted by older adults in their lives. And so many of us that are in senior living have exactly that experience. Similar to you, I was also raised by my grandparents while my parents were out running their businesses. And I spent so much time in the presence of my grandparents and my great-grandparents that like you, have a deep love and admiration for older adults. Like, just, they are the very best people. And when I started helping them, older adults, not my grandparents, with their technology, it really was a reconnection to the place I always knew I loved, which was in the presence of an older adult. And so it's so heartwarming to hear that. I absolutely love that. What do you do with KARE as the VP of product development?
Yeah, so VP of product means that I transform market problems into real solutions that people can utilize to do whatever they need to do. When we think about any of those problems, it comes with a real impact, whether that be monetary impact, experience impact, and I need to understand what that is, translate that to solutions, and also understanding what the business viability is. So if you take like a Venn diagram, user experience, technology, and the business opportunity, I'm right in the middle of that. So I love listening to stories. So this is my favorite thing. Yeah.
And what I found with older adults is that they've got stories, they have wisdom, they have experiences that they want to share. And so every interaction with an older adult involves stories, right?
Absolutely. And the caregiving team too. They have so many stories of how they supported, what their history is, what they want to do. You know, in my journey, having so many conversations with operators, but more importantly, with the people who are actually taking care of the residents and what their needs are and how they can feel supported to do the job every single day to take care of the residents, while at the same time, you know, being able to be supportive and all the other things that they need in order to be successful and, you know, have their livelihood. Because this is mixture for them getting paid, but what we've heard is this is a passion for the caregivers in the industry. They are here because of the residents, because of what they get to do every day. And it's so empowering to provide or figure out how to provide the best tools for those caregivers.
Let me ask you this, you know, in your 4 years, what has been one of the most surprising shifts that you've seen in how caregivers view their roles today versus, say, back in 2022?
Yeah, and that was a very interesting time, right? 2022, well, 2020, 2021, 2022. I think in 22, we finally got to a more normalcy after the COVID pandemic. Like 2020 was a lot of chaos, like a lot of friction points, a lot of information that was being clarified on a daily basis, operational changes that were happening as well. And so by the time we finally got to 2022, I do feel that the caregivers at that point in time had a better semblance of this idea of I demand respect. And they were talking at that point in time that they just went through a lot and they were very much impacted by the amount of complications when it came to, I think, things coming down from like the top, whether that's government or operation wise, what had or did not have to be done. And in a lot of cases, and I will definitely celebrate those communities and organizations that listened to those caregivers and brought them to the table to figure out how to best do those implementations. So at that time, it was interesting because I think that there was this shift to say, I need to feel respected. And what we found in our survey, so backing up a second, we did surveys in 2019, 2021, 2023, and 2025 with over 60,000 caregivers we sent them out to. We got responses about 10 to 15% each time. And we noticed trends over time. And in that moment, a lot of the deltas between the caregivers and the operators was about respect. They really wanted to that respect level. Somebody just walking around and saying, how are you doing? How can I help you? Bringing them to the table with ideas. So that was at that point in time. What we found is over the past 4 years, that's actually transpired. So what we found is that there's a lot more bringing caregivers to the table to be asking questions. How can we do this better? How can we support you? And even at that time, also, there was a lot of feedback from caregivers about pay. And I want to show you something really quick. I'm going to share my screen. Excuse me. This is a really fascinating statistic that we found. And when we surveyed this, it was, let me see, share screen. Sorry, we're getting there. We're almost there. Okay. So what we found from 2019 all the way up through, if you could see my screen, is a 30% increase in the average CNA wage nationally. That is incredible. So some of that like respect level and pay increase has definitely transpired that we've seen. That's fabulous news in the time period. What I would say is at this point in time, the most surprising thing that we found is a little bit of a transition between now that they feel a little bit more supported, the want for more advancement. They want to be trained. They want to get to that next level of their career. And so they want not just to be having like traditional benefits, but in a lot of cases, they're like, hey, I can see now being a CNA to an LPN to an RN, a career path that I can be dedicated to. And I want to advance myself and I want my communities to help me get there. So we're seeing a lot of into enhancements. Is that me?
A little bit.
I'm sorry. I might get a little feedback on my microphone. Let's see if I can turn that down a little bit.
Yeah, so surprisingly, It seems like the biggest shift that you've noticed is that a caregiver is looking for a career trajectory. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yes. Career trajectory. There is this goal that they want to continue in this. What we found also is that more like, I think, let me see if I can find this actually statistic. A high percentage of respondents said that they want to stay in the industry. It's like over 80%. It's an incredible statistic. And if they do want to stay in the industry, then they just need to be upskilled to continue on that career trajectory. So we're finding that a lot with people who are at least responding to our surveys.
You know, what we find with the residents that we're helping with technology is that we find that they usually start with something is broken and needs to be fixed. And once our tech concierge at the community is able to repair the broken or the missing app or the password, whatever the case is, and the resident starts to really build in their knowledge level and their confidence, then they really want to start understanding what they can do within and with their technology to really personalize it and make it work for them. So it's exciting to see this evolution occur, not only with the caregivers, but also within the residents and them learning technology.
And I think that it all comes down to what is the purpose or what's the call to action? What am I trying to accomplish and why is that important to me? I mean, I think we've talked before, Abby, about anybody can learn anything as long as they have that desire and that understanding of this is what's important to me. I've talked to residents where they've said, I just want to like understand what's happening so I can choose what I participate in from an activity level, or I want to be able to get things done in my house. So like being able to say, I'm going to submit a service request, whatever that is, it's something that is innate or important to them. And if they have the pathway to be able to do that, I think it's very possible. I believe so much in the ability and adaptability of people. And the same thing is with caregivers too. If it's important, like flexibility of schedule is a very important thing. You know, when we're talking about different people, either they have young kids that they have to adjust their schedule for. I think, you know, one of the things that we connected with a little bit before this meeting was this sandwich generation, right? This kind of participation of there's so much demand on your time and I need to work to be able to do this. However, things come up. And I need some more flexibility to be able to say that I can work at this time or I can't work at this other time. If you think about all of that design or how you would approach that problem, you really need to understand like what are those goals for that person and how can we make a call to action, a process flow, the simplest and clearest way possible. Let's not be cute with names. Let's not be like, you know, trying to make things more complicated than they need to be. Let's just say this is what you're doing. I need to swap a shift or I need to do something else where I have an achievement, that call to action that I need to like get to the end of. How can we make that process as efficient and effective as possible so they know where they're going and they feel successful at the end?
And within your data and collecting that type of data about the sandwich generation, which, you know, many of us are in right now, we're taking care of parents, we're taking care of kids at home. What have you been able to find that really helps caregivers balance their own families while caring for their older generation?
Yeah, I think flexibility and ease of use is definitely a huge piece of it. When we surveyed our caregivers, we did find that the other ends of the spectrum, the younger generation and the older generation, did have a higher propensity to want to stay in the industry. The middle had more challenges. They had a lower percentage of wanting to stay in the industry, mainly because their top item was flexibility. They needed that flexibility. They need the benefits to be able to also take care of both ends of that spectrum for themselves. So if we think about that particular generation that is taking care, working at communities or supporting older adults, having you know, somebody older that maybe they're the sole caretaker at home, or they know their parent is in a senior living community or some sort of community, as well as taking care of children. That's so much mental load, on them. So one of the other things just to briefly bring up is in 2024, we did a trauma report. And we surveyed all of our caregivers again to ask them how their experience at home or their experience as childhood, like in their childhood, impacted their daily lives. And what we did find is that normally, and this is like a national survey, any normal person might have one adverse childhood event, ACE. Caregivers that are in senior living have more like 4 or 5. So if we really think about another piece of the puzzle is approaching caregivers, people who are taking care of others, with a sense of empathy and understanding where they're coming from, what maybe they're bringing to the table as they're caring for everyone else, having some grace. And instead of saying, what are you doing? Say like, what happened to you? How can I support you in this process? So another piece that's going to be really helpful for especially the sandwich generation is understanding that. And then also putting programs in place to help support them and manage them a little bit better.
Would you say that some of these programs would be implementing AI or robotics?
That is a really good question. That is a fantastic question. Possibly. It's a very interesting perspective of how different generations absorb new technology and accept that. And I think, it's all about how you present it too. I do find an opportunity with AI to understand more, to get more information, to understand more, to uncover pieces, right? There's AI, a lot of different ways of AI, right? One of those AI could be automation. One of those AI could be, data consolidation. There's so many data points out there that you can look at. What's the signal versus the noise? And you could go through like analysis paralysis. AI helps to cut through that. However, there are, in my opinion, from a technology standpoint, some cautions that we should, take when we're implementing AI. We have a lot of information that is very private, HIPAA. We know all of this, right, about the people we're taking care of or what we're doing. And so it's very important for us to make sure that we have the guardrails in place to apply AI. So AI could be in a lot of different ways, from how can I best care for these residents, understanding who they are, how can I connect with them better? It could also be AI from a scheduling standpoint. How do I schedule in the best way to make sure that the right people are scheduled for the right times for the residents that we actually have and their care plan or their activities of daily living or anything else like that. So one piece of AI is uncovering that. We need the guardrails of information so that we were not providing or causing a privacy breach for the people we're taking care of. The other piece too is I do feel that as a general statement, AI is evolving so quickly. And there is a piece there that I think we need human oversight and auditing of what is happening. Critical thinking has to come very much along side by side with AI. We need to see what is happening, what were the results, does this make sense? And then have like a human say, like, we're going to apply this AI. We're going to understand what this is, how this happened, and go forward. I've seen in some cases, some times where internally, like we use a lot of AI for the company to progress our ideas, to get clarity, to put together packages and then submit it. And as here's a solution that we want to build, let's build this, this makes sense. And you can tell in some cases, okay, you used AI for this, where was the critical thinking? Can we get some feedback? Can we refine this idea? And then we approve it to move forward. If you just let AI do it and then say, well, you're going to apply it, I feel like that's a challenge. Like that's something that I feel really concerned that we're not taking that critical eye hard enough with AI. So that's my cautionary tale. I feel though it opens up the door to so much.
It really does, especially data collection and the application of that. Beyond just providing shifts for caregivers, how are you also evolving to provide financial benefits or tools for caregivers who are lacking traditional corporate benefits?
Yeah, that's a great question. We found there is this delta in what the organizations believe caregivers want and what caregivers actually want. As an organization who has heroes on our platform, they pick up shifts of communities that can't, can't schedule their own internal staff. That's our Care Marketplace product. That in particular product, we have almost like multiple like GPOs because we have so many caregivers that we're able to help subsidize things like workers' comp through our platform, just because of the fact that they're working, they're able to do this. So like we want to protect our caregivers with what they're doing at the community. But then we also have deals with things like AFLEC or health insurance or a lot of other things to be able to have somebody pay into it without having to surface that themselves. I do think that when I'm seeing survey results come back and people say, hey, we give health insurance, but it's not fully paid for. And so the highest result or the highest response of why don't you take our health insurance? It's because I can't afford it still. And so it's a very interesting thing. Like I would encourage everyone to relook at that, understanding what benefits people are declining and why are they actually declining that? Is there a way that we can satisfy a need with those benefits? Because we do it for our heroes, but obviously communities would need to do that for their own employees.
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with education and just breaking down the benefits overall. We find the same thing in technology when we're working with older adults. There might be an initial resistance to, say, adopting a password manager, right? Like, oh, no, I'm just going to keep my simple password as is because it's easier. But without the education and the knowledge that a simple password is very likely going to lead to breaches and fraud and all sorts of things. Without that knowledge, an older adult is still at risk for scams and frauds. And so it's just a matter of really educating and increasing confidence in order to teach something new that's going to benefit them, that's already built into everything that you're doing.
And that's such a great comment, Abby, because it's not just the one-time education. You can think that like, hey, I gave this information and it was a one-time education. It's a continuous effort to educate. It's maybe they heard it and they brushed it aside. Maybe they didn't absorb it because they were dealing with something. And so it's like multiple methods of communicating that. You have a meeting, you have a flyer, you post it somewhere, you send emails. A month later, you kind of revisit it. So it is a constant need to continuously educate on what you have. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're finding, having been in senior living now for about 8 years, I'm finding that originally the concept of having a tech education was a nice to have. Let's put this on the calendar once a month, and then we'll be, supporting those residents who have this interest. But today, it's no longer a nice to have. It's a need to have. And it should be considered part of infrastructure as opposed to an amenity, not even considered an activity anymore. It's way more valuable than that. It's part of infrastructure when you start thinking about helping so many people with the devices that they're moving into your community or a community with. It's massive, and it's only going to grow from there. So, the other thing I wanted to ask you about is in regards to all of the growth within the boomers. How do you think that there are some developments, for instance, in what's going to happen in the near future with staffing, with caregivers, and also with the demand for occupancy?
I got slides.
Okay.
Give me a second. This is, yes, there's a lot there. Let me share my screen and I can show you some of the things that we are seeing and what the impacts can be for sure. Okay. So we know this is a 2020 census, and we know that there's this cliff. So in 2020, that's 6 years ago now, that the cliff of more people aging up was at 73. So 6 years later now, that's 79. So we see this population that is aging into the need for some type of service, right? And so as we're looking at that need coming in, what we're seeing also is that occupancy starting to come back. We're expecting at the end of 2026 for occupancy to be hitting more close to 85%. 80's like, so we're gaining and gaining and gaining on a national average. Well, what that means then from a staffing perspective is that if we're going, 90%. Yep, that's where we're going. So we have additional workers that will be needed by the end of this year of 174,000. Where are we going to be getting those caregivers? That's what the challenge is that we have to really look at this possibility and understanding that we see employment kind of following the same COVID trends that we had. We've lost a lot of jobs since 2020. However, that has now gotten pretty much also, just like occupancy, gotten to pre-pandemic levels. But that's only because like we're now back to pre-pandemic levels and we have this now gap to get to so many more. So is this going to be a very, very interesting perspective, especially since all other healthcare sectors, employment is at an increase and it's senior living that's not. So here's what the thoughts are, a couple pieces. We have a lot of people in the industry who are doing their best to change the narrative around senior living from a marketing standpoint, both on the resident side of things as well as the caregiver side of things, that this is important. For us, we're trying to open up that pool with our care marketplace by pre-qualifying people, checking their licensure, doing their background checks, verifying their documents on a per state basis. And so that way, if you cannot satisfy your internal staffing, post an open shift on us. You don't pay for it unless it's worked for that particular caregiver. And then, hey, let's try people out, right? Let's see if they're a good fit. And if they are, hire them for free. So we want to expand the pool of opportunity, both for the caregiver side as well as for the community side, finding that recruitment without necessarily having to post a job, do interviews, have somebody come in for one shift, 2 shifts. If they're a good fit, give them an offer, say come in fully. And then there's no extra fees from us for that. That's what we want. We want more people to be in the communities.
I love that. We got a question here from Dalen. He said, I love this information about caregivers and getting their perspectives. Regarding support for caregivers, are these surveys studied by senior leadership to learn how to change with the times and workforce? Our leadership teams may want to help, but may not know how.
Right. Hi, Dalen. Thank you so much for that question. We provide this information at a lot of conferences. So you will see us on top of a lot of podiums, showing these slides, sharing this data. We also have, and I can share with this, Abby, afterwards so that you can post this, we do have all of our survey results to be shared so that way everybody can learn that information. I think the crux of this question is, how do we go about from here to there? We're surveying people and just finding information. There's nothing stopping any organization from surveying their caregivers and getting feedback. How can we do better? What is your perspective? And then bringing that to the table and finding solutions. It's just a matter of doing that survey, understanding what that is, and then putting plans in action.
Yeah, we also have some of that struggle with talking about changing the perception of tech education within senior living communities. We know it's there. We know we're so close to hitting that tipping point. So it's truly a matter of, getting in there, having those conversations, talking with people at conferences and changing the narrative around that. Yeah. I want to ask you, with just another couple of minutes left, first, I want to ask you about the impact that you're seeing in the Florida market and how that may differentiate from other senior living markets across the country.
That is a good question. I will say we are operating in Florida as well as other states. What we're trying to do is just trying to create that opportunity between what the community actually needs and what the caregiver needs as well. So I know that there's a lot of situations, and I want to get back to the kind of question, is that there is investment into nursing education and onboarding this new wave of talent without the 49-day hiring lag. I just want to make sure that that is very clear. That's the question that you're really asking, is how does that impact We need investment. We need investment in training. We need investment in the future of this aging population to make sure that we have as much as possible available for them. Florida is a state, I live in Florida, and it is a state that has a high percentage of older adults living in this state. I mean, it's a gorgeous state. I love living in this state. So I'm like retiring in the state. I'm going to be here forever. But I do think that the investment in that nursing education is just going to help. And again, getting back to more of like the purpose, having a more marketing plan of telling the story of senior living. And I've seen awesome things come out of, I know Nebraska, there was a series going into communities and telling the story of the caregivers and like what it takes and like their beautiful stories. I'm not quite sure if they went to Arizona as well. That's, I'll have to look into that, but I know they did multiple series of going into different states and different communities. I forget what the name is off the top of my head. I know it's with Jaylene Carpenter and Pete. I forget what his name is. So I will have to follow up with that and make sure that everybody gets a look at that. It's a beautiful series of videos and episodes. And I think it's available on a streaming platform that I won't say because I don't remember exactly which one. So we'll get to it. Sorry about that. Really clear. Perfect.
You know, it has been so wonderful to have you. I feel like we could talk on and on about this deepening need and solution. How can people connect with you for more information?
Sure. You can connect with me, Evans at ducare.com. That's ducare with a K.com. I also encourage everyone to go to our websites, www.ducare.com. And we also came out just this month with a new free scheduling time and attendance tool. We're really excited about it. Please don't be offended. It's not another staffing tool for the industry. It's an acronym. It is NASTi, which, come on, we got to bring some joy back into the industry a little bit. So you can also go to www.getnasty.com. It's NASTi, not another staffing tool for the industry. So check us out there.
Very clever. And we just want to thank those of you who have participated in the conversation and who may be chiming in later on. We love it when you do that, and really makes our day. And we just want to thank Leading Age Arizona for sponsoring this episode, and we will see you all right back here next week. Bye.